tlaqna.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome you for our second webinar for this year, entitled Business Incentives for Gozitan Based Enterprises. Daniel Borch, our CEO, could not be present today, unfortunately, so I am hosting this webinar on his behalf. I thank him for his work done with respect to this, to be able to conduct this webinar. So this webinar will discuss incentives which are either specific to Gozitan-based enterprises or which are more adapted to the nature of Gozitan businesses. The proposed Gozo Regional Development Strategy highlighted that micro-enterprises in Gozo accounted for 96% of businesses, as compared to 94% nationally. In fact, quoting active business enterprises in 2015 from an ad hoc report carried out by the NSO in 2018, it highlighted that there were 2,107 micro, 65 small, 9 medium, and 5 large enterprises in Gozo. This means that the nature of the business landscape in Gozo is different to the national one. Consequently, the needs are different too. The same applies to specific sectors such as tourism, where the self-catering accommodation sector accounts for 78.3% of the total bed stock in Gozo. We have an important area of speakers today and panelists as well. To this end, special thanks goes to, first of all, Anthony David Gatt, the head of external communications at Malta Enterprise, Ronald Sultana, Director of Tourism and Economic Development at Bank of Valletta, and Ruth, sorry, not Bank of Valletta, the Ministry of Gozo, and Ruth Genovese, Senior Manager, Business Development at Bank of Valletta. I would like to thank them in advance for their contribution during this webinar. All of those who are participating on our online platform, please feel free to post your comments and questions, which will be answered by our panelists during the dedicated question and answer session at the end of the webinar. We hope that you will find this webinar useful. Without further ado, I would like to start off with our President, Joseph Borch, who will be making his introductory remarks. Joseph?
Good morning to all. Thank you, Elaine, for your introduction. I welcome you all those who have joined us through our online platform, and also those who are following us through our social media. Good morning to all. As a chamber, we have for a long time felt the need for this information session. And I am satisfied that today we have been able to group 3 entities, that is the Gozo Ministry, Malta Enterprise, and Bank of Valletta, who will provide us with a good overview, both of specific incentives for Gozitan-based enterprises, and also other incentives which are more suitable for Gozitan businesses. The reasoning behind this webinar comes a long way. From a regional perspective, it acknowledges that the business landscape in Gozo is different from that of the main island of Malta. It is something on which the chamber is focused, and our argumentation lies on the fact that Gozo's needs are different, and therefore these differences have to be tackled differently. We have a higher concentration of micro businesses, as Elaine has said in her introduction. Even the tourism industry, on which the economy in Gozo strongly depends, is dependent on a different genre of tourism, very much dependent on the self-catering accommodation sector. Moreover, we have specific difficulties, which include the double insularity factor, amongst others. For companies operating on a national and international platform, accessibility remains and is a major issue, as time means money, and we have to remain vigilant to be competitive. We have to remain vigilant on costs, and so this session today will help us see how help can be accrued. The scope of this webinar, therefore, will be to see which incentives are more suitable to the local business scenario. To this end, obviously, I would like to thank the three speakers who will be joining us today, that is Anthony David Gatt, Ronald Sultana, and Ruth Genovese, who will deliver their presentations on behalf of their respective entities. Thank you very much, and we look forward to hear from you.
Thank you, Joseph. I would now like to invite Anthony David Gatt to deliver his presentation.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you can see my presentation. So I'm trying to shift.
The loading? Yes, we can see it now. Thank you.
Okay. Is it in full screen? Okay. All
Not
right.
yet.
Moment.
F5.
Okay. Just a moment. So. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for your patience. So thank you for having us this morning. Malta Enterprise, as potentially many of you would know, is the country's investment promotion arm and also economic development agency. Basically, in simple words, it means that we are here to assist already established businesses in Gozo and in Malta, and also to assist companies to relocate to Gozo and to Malta. Today, we'll be touching upon a number of our incentives. Our incentives are thought of in a number of ways, mainly to support enterprises in their development through their life cycle, through their lifetime. And apart from that, then we have particular incentives that focus on particular functions, be them R&D, skills development, and others. However, today we'll be focusing on incentives that whereby Gozo has a stronger output from these incentives, and then shifting over to a number of other incentives that are available to all Gozitan, but also Maltese businesses. Let me start off with the first slide, explaining what incentives we'll be touching on today. We'll start off with Smart and Sustainable Investment Grant, which is an incentive that we have recently launched as Malta Enterprise in our efforts to support businesses in their, in their route towards regeneration after the COVID scenario. And the very popular micro-invest scheme, that is one of the schemes that our SMEs and small businesses know most, because it is not only popular, but also effective in supporting their investments and also their micro-investments. We'll then turn on to Business Development Grant, which is the minimum scheme that is capped at 200,000 euros over a revolving period of 3 years, which is also an interesting and a popular incentive that provides the needed capital for our businesses to make particular investments. Change to Grow, again, is another incentive that we launched as part of our regeneration program, where we are asking and encouraging our businesses to take a good look at their business plan, their business model, and find ways how to reinvent and re-engineer themselves in order to be ready for this post-pandemic scenario. When it comes to the soft loan incentive, it's a new or newly revamped scheme that makes available a loan directly from Malta Enterprise. This type of scheme is directed towards scale-ups, which are companies that are moving on from being a startup to the next phase of their development, but also to a wider array of companies, as I'll explain further on. Skills development scheme is another important scheme that we have in our portfolio, which focuses on providing our employees with the needed upskilling in order to face the challenges of today. Let's jump on to the Smart and Sustainable Investment Grant, which I have already referred to. The Smart and Sustainable Investment Grant is focusing on economic activity that operates from licensed commercial property. The investment projects that we are looking at supporting here would be projects between 10 and 100,000 euros. And there is a requirement of having one full-time employee on the books of the company. But basically what we are discussing here is a quantum of 50% of investment costs up to a maximum of 50,000 euros per project. So we are talking about a 50K subvention that can be made available on projects, which typologies I will explain soon. And this is one of those incentives whereby we are allocating further assistance to companies that are present projects result in a new or an expansion of investment in Gozo, with a 10% increase in the form of tax credit over and above the 50,000 euros. The activities and projects that could be eligible for under the scheme, the Smart and Sustainable Investment Scheme, are waste minimization, sustainable materials, energy efficiency, water efficiency, and sustainable digitalization. So basically what we're saying is, looking forward after COVID and in a reality where digital and sustainability are the two main pillars that are being pushed not only on a European platform, but also on a local level, on a Maltese government level, there are opportunities for investment. We are sure that our companies are looking at now reinvesting and looking at improving their outputs. And if those investments are happening in one of these 5 areas, then Malta Enterprise, through the Smart and Sustainable Investment Grant, can provide tangible and effective help in order for that investment to be worthwhile for our companies. So not just going green for the sake of it, but going green and adopting green practices because green pays as well. Moving on to the microinvest tax credits, which again, as we said, quite famous with our attendees and the wider business community. So microinvest encourages undertakings, including small businesses like startups, family businesses, and self-employed to invest in their business so as to innovate and expand and develop their operations. Amongst the costs that one can assist on as a percentage of eligible expenditure, there are a number of costs, but this also includes increase in wage costs. So eligibility criteria for microinvest. So eligibility criteria for microinvest, that the company doesn't employ more than 50 employees. However, that there is one employee at least on the company's books. That the annual balance sheet total of undertaking that does not increase the 10 million, so turnover doesn't increase the 10 million, and that the entity is duly registered with the VAT authorities. The typology of support here is kept at 50K as well. However, again, where we look at supporting further Gozo businesses, the capping shall be increased by 20,000 euros to a total of 70,000 euros for companies, single undertakings, if at least one of these criteria is met, and Gozo is one, operating from the sister island of Gozo is one of these criteria. Other criteria are family businesses and ownership, 50% ownership attributed to female individuals. So those were the 2 schemes where the assistance to Gozitan businesses is seen as there's an increase for Gozitan businesses, which is even more palpable. However, Gozitan businesses are Maltese businesses, are part of the wider ecosystem of our business ecosystem, and therefore any other incentives obviously would apply. Gozo businesses would be eligible for these support measures, and we'll run through a number of them now. I'm starting off with the Business Development 2021, the Business Development Grant, whereby projects related to future developments of the following activities shall be considered for support in the form of either cash grants or tax credits. So here we are referring to companies operating in manufacturing, waste of environmental solutions, R&D, digitalization, and also in the industry of MROs within the aviation perspective. But what costs are being covered through this business development grant, which again, as I explained, is kept at 200,000 euros over 3 rolling fiscal years. We can consider assistance on relocation costs of key personnel, payroll costs, which might be amongst the most interesting of elements that we can support and advisory services, relocation of tangible assets, construction and development of facilities. In the sense we are referring to development of facilities for manufacturing activities, licenses, and also procurement of tangible assets. Moving on to another amongst our newer schemes, Change to Grow, as I alluded to in the very beginning. This is a scheme which is directed to trying to seek external help from advisors in order to re-engineer one's business. The scheme, in its previous iteration, only covered the advisory stage. However, we saw fit to improve the scheme to now also include the implementation stage, because we believe that having the feedback from an advisor on the ways by which you can change your business is positive. However, we wanted to continue lending support also in the implementation stage. So as I explained, the advisory stage is capped at 5K and up to 120 euros per hour, excluding VAT on those services. And there's another 5,000 euros that can be made available under the Change to Grow scheme, however, in the implementation stage. Another scheme is soft loan. In this case, we are not referring to a banking loan, so the parties that would be part of this loan would be Malta Enterprise and the eligible company. Limited liability companies engaged in manufacturing or service activities may be supported via the scheme. And here we are looking at projects that would be in the development of a new product or entering a new geographical market, projects that are related to digitalization, environmental issues, or sustainability. As you can see, a common thread amongst the majority of incentives that Malta Enterprise is pushing forward is the element of sustainability, not just sustainability in the sense of economic sustainability and profitability for our companies, but also sustainability in the sense of taking care of the environment and using at the maximum the resources that are made available in order to protect sustainability at large from an ecological point of view. The soft loan, we are referring here to two modalities, two ceilings, 1 million maximum under soft loan, which will be repayable within a 5-year term. However, if one would be looking at a soft loan as a maximum of €500,000 euros, then the repayable period would be that of 10 years. Skills development scheme. As we all know, as time goes by, not only because of COVID, but also in a normal situation, in a normal environment, the reskilling and upskilling of our employees is something which is crucial for the rendition of any company and for asserting the level and attaining the level needed from clients and from third parties from your companies, and Malta Enterprise wants to support there as well. When we are referring to the skills development scheme, Here we are focusing on assistance on training for your employees. However, one needs to not think of training which is either required by law or in the form of team building. This is imparting of knowledge for skills improvement for our HR cohort. So the undertaking in this case must employ at least 5 persons. And as I just said, the support would be requested on acquiring skills and know-how and knowledge. Corporation may support training delivered to one or more employees of the beneficiary from other employees within the company, from employees from related enterprises, from external experts, and also from private training providers holding licenses from the NCFHE. However, one might ask, what are the costs that would be eligible for support via the skills development scheme? Consultancy costs for developing of the training program, so the cost for the development of the training program itself, wage costs for the trainees covering the direct contact hours during which the trainee is participating in the training. So your trainees which are have to be excused from work because they are actually being trained, those hours can be also recouped via our scheme. Wage cost of trainers, air travel expenses incurred to send trainees to foreign training locations, but also to bring in trainers to Malta, and also renting of training rooms, tools, and equipment. The skills development scheme has the following aid intensity. It's capped at 2 million euros per project, and a small company can find the support up to 70%, a medium-sized company 60%. For large companies, the percentage of support is that of 50%. With that slide, I wrap up my presentation. A final couple of notes. I do understand that the details in the schemes are various, and there's quite some details that one needs to get into. However, I wanted to keep this presentation as quick as possible in order for other attendees to continue with their presentations. However, we can make this presentation available to the attendees and anyone who would want to get to the further details. As you can see here, our website, maltaenterprise.com, would then direct you to the different guidelines of these various schemes under support measures. And most importantly, our business first, which is Malta's and Gozo's one-stop shop when it comes to businesses, is available to meet you via call, in person at Imriel, or also by asking questions via email. Our Malta Enterprise also has a Gozo office. So for those who would like to also to get in touch with our Gozo office, this would be also a possibility. The message is clear. We're a call away, we're an email away, and we'll be happy to always be in touch with you and to answer your questions and direct you to the right kind of incentives that would have the best effect on the growth of your business at this moment in time. I thank also the organizers for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Anthony, for that fruitful presentation on, let's say, some of the incentives, because I know that I'm aware that Malta Enterprise provides a large number of incentives, but obviously we are limited with time, so you could only go through the main ones applicable to the Gozo enterprises. Thank you once again. I would like now to invite Ronald Sultana, Director of Tourism and Economic Development on behalf of the Ministry for Gozo, in order to provide us with his presentation.
So good morning to all. First of all, I thank the Gozo Business Chamber for providing this opportunity to us in order to further divulge information with regards to schemes that the Ministry for Gozo offers. I also thank Anthony for his very clear and informative presentation. And before I go into some of the details and the dynamics of the different schemes that we offer, I also want to spare a couple of words in order to shed light on the motivations why the Ministry for Gozo also has its own schemes. And this all goes back to the past governmental legislature, whereby we have seen a very strong force and direction towards economic growth in Gozo and also employment generation in Gozo. However, it's important to specify that the employment generation in Gozo was targeted towards stable employment and also sustainable employment. And you will see as long as I will be rendering some information about these schemes, how this was also being done. If we had also to look at the numbers of the performance during the last legislature, we can also see that even though there was the pandemic, Gozo managed to enjoy an all-time high in terms of employment rates in Gozo and an all-time low in terms of unemployment rates in Gozo. With regards to our schemes, I also want to say that these have been employed and announced since 2018. And if we had to have a snapshot of all the applications, we have processed just over 700 applications. In this regard, I think that when we were also witnessing that sort of growth, I think that we can also do more. So these are very important sessions in order to further provide and expose information about the opportunities that there are out there. And before I go into the dynamics of these schemes, I am also announcing that even this year, these schemes are available and they are subject to further extensions in the years to come. Yes, so the first scheme that I will be discussing here today is the Gozo Employment Refund Scheme. And this scheme was announced back in 2018. The basic principle of this scheme is the relationship between the employer and the employee. In other words, we are talking about newly recruited employment. And as we can see from that feature, there is a 3-year cycle. And the grant covers up to €6,000 in the form of a cash grant spread over 3 years. And in order to further incentivize that sustainability and that stability, we are looking first and foremost at employment contracts that go for a minimum of a 3-year duration. And thereby, after the first year of employment, there will be the eligibility of 20% of the 6,000 grant, which stands at 1,200. And as the years progress, we can see that the grant increases as well. So in the end of the year, in the end of the 3rd year, there is a final grant of €3,000. Now, there again, I want to also highlight something that Anthony was saying before. There are guidelines, and these guidelines, I cannot strongly recommend enough that these are read carefully. However, I'm here to discuss these schemes, and I'm going to take the liberty to divulge some of the main or the salient eligibility criteria. So first and foremost, the employee must be a resident in Gozo. Secondly, the workplace also has to be in Gozo. And the recruitment in terms of time frame have to have been started by not before 1st November 2020. And I want to explain something on this. So if someone is viewing this presentation here today, and he had, or she had, or the company, enterprise, whatever, has employed someone back since 1st November 2020, they would be eligible to apply for the scheme. In terms of employment, we are looking at full-time employment only, and it is also important to say that the final beneficiary for these grants are the employer. With regards to the second scheme that I would like to also mention today is the Gozo Back Office Scheme. This scheme was launched in 2020, and the objective of this scheme is mainly to support service-based firms. Now, however, the employees here, they have to be conducting tasks that are mainly back office oriented. Now, we also get that question, what does back office necessarily means? Most of the time, back office used to be perceived as those employees who are literally sitting by the phone all day, taking queries and acting as a customer care support. However, we are not looking at that sort of employment only, because we also understand that there are lots of different nomenclatures of employments, such as in IT, such as in graphic design, etc., that they are mainly conducting office-based work, and their interactions on a face-to-face basis with clients is very, very, very minimal. So that's my way of trying to clarify what we look at in terms of back office employment. And if one had to also look at the financials offered here, one can also see that this scheme is trying to target certain quality level of employment. And there are 3 thresholds: category A, category B, and category C. The higher the annual salary granted to the employee, the higher the grant. And on the 3-year cycle, one can see that they are quite very interesting and generous cash grants that one can enjoy from. Something else that I would also like to mention here is this. A company can enjoy simultaneously from the previous scheme and this scheme. However, they cannot register the same employee for both schemes. So it's either or on a basis of an employee. However, the company can benefit from both schemes simultaneously. A quick run through as well on the salient eligibility criteria. The employee must be also a Gozo-based resident. The employer must have a business address in Gozo. And this is also something that I would like to allow our viewers to understand. This is not only based or targeting the Gozo-based enterprises. So the Gozo-based enterprises, they are eligible to obtain these grants. However, we can also configure here in this scheme Malta-based enterprises who would also like to relocate or to extend their operations, and the same goes for international-based firms. And in this regard, something that we also have to mention is the time frame of the employment. So first and foremost, the basic principle is that the recruitment has to have been taking place in Gozo by 1st March 2020 onwards. However, since we are also targeting those companies who are performing a relocation, who are performing an extension of operations, those companies who may have had employees that were recruited before 1st of March 2020, then if they are deploying their employees after 1st March 2020, they would be eligible. There again, the financial beneficiary to this scheme is the employer. The third scheme and the final scheme that I will be mentioning here today is the Gozo teleworking scheme. Now, the objective of this scheme is slightly different to the objectives of the previous 2. And then one would mainly or probably ask, why are we mentioning this? And I will come to this. So the main objective of this scheme is to support Gozitan resident employees who are working in Malta within the private sector. And if one had to come with a straight objective, one would say that this scheme is a sort of a family-friendly or a work-life balance measure, because we can all acknowledge that commuting on a daily basis to go to work back and forth is very challenging and it's very time-consuming. So this also is helping the Gozitan residents to also find opportunities of work in Malta. But going to my question previously, why am I mentioning this? I am mentioning this because over the years, we've had Gozitan-based enterprises who have evolved, who have grew, and they have also opened and set shop in Malta. So in that regard, having that they have been moved towards Malta, they would still be eligible to benefit from schemes that we are offering. And since they may probably also have Gozo residents working with them, they could also benefit from this teleworking scheme. And even here, we are looking at something stable and something sustainable. And the maximum grant here is €10,000. But that depends on how many teleworking days the employee is granted. So for us, the minimum is 40% of the working days. That would mean 2 days a week. If we had to take the classical example of a 5-day week, 8-hour-a-day employment type, you would have 2 days a week whereby you would be granted teleworking. There, you will be paid pro rata on the 2 days a week and the 3 days a week. If someone is granted 4 days a week or 5 days a week, they would be eligible for the maximum grant. And as the years progress, we can see that in the 3rd year, there is the largest financial cash grant, which stands at €4,000. Apart from that, we also have another component of financial grants within this scheme, whereby we are also supporting those enterprises who, since they will be granting teleworking to their employees, they would be in the need of purchasing IT equipment. And there we have a reimbursement rate at 75% up to a maximum of €850. If I also had to give a quick run through in terms of the eligibility criteria, there again, the employee must be a Gozo resident. The employee must be employed in Malta within the private sector. And when conducting teleworking, those teleworking days have to be conducted away from premises owned by their employer. The financial beneficiary, again, to this scheme is the employer. Now, as Anthony also mentioned, the time constraints are there. I would have liked to go into more information, but I'm also going to provide some details of how to access to these schemes. And mainly, all you have to do is visit the Ministry for Gozo's official website, which is www.mgoz.gov.mt. And as indicated there by that orange arrow, all you have to do is select online services, and you would scroll down till you find these schemes that I have just mentioned. There again, read carefully the guidelines. You will find the guidelines there, and you will also find the e-form for those who would then subsequently want to apply to benefit from the schemes. I'm also sharing our generic email addresses for all the schemes, employer scheme at .gov.mt, teleworking scheme, and the back office scheme as well. So from my end, that's all. I thank you for your attention. I'm also providing my own personal phone and email there for anyone who would want to get back to me. I would be more than happy also to schedule meetings if those are necessary. And as Anthony was saying, we are also just an email or phone call away for anyone who wants to ask for more information. Thank you.
Thank you, and Ronald, for that, yet again, fruitful presentation, which highlighted, as we saw, schemes not only targeting Gozitan businesses, but also Gozitan employees who work with Maltese in the Maltese private sector, basically. I now would like to invite our last speaker, Ruth Genovese from BOV, to give us her presentation. Ruth?
Good morning, everyone. Share the presentation. Is it in full screen?
Not yet. Go on full screen. Bottom, from the bottom. Otherwise, F5. F5 for the keyboard.
Okay, is it coming?
Not yet.
Richard, she should enable editing before.
All right.
Okay.
F5 again.
Okay. All right, and now? Is it in full screen?
Okay. Yes. All right. Thank you.
So, good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invite to Bank of Valletta. Today, we will be going through the Jamie improved product features, which I'm sure you'll find very interesting because it can help you further develop your business. To date, actually till December 2021, Bank of Valletta has sanctioned 74 million of these kind of Jamie loans and has reached 765 different SMEs, which I think is very encouraging. The purpose of the Jamie loan, as the name implies, first of all, this is a loan, not an overdraft. Thereby, monthly repayments are expected to be done. The purpose is very ample. Most of the capital expenditures can be reached and financed under this Jamie loan. Goodwill is not one of them, because we have a lot of inquiries about goodwill, what we call in Maltese irregal. But mainly, most of the other capital expenditures are covered under the JME financing. Also, working capital. By working capital, we mean the initial stock. We do not mean the initial stock of an ongoing concern. So if a grocery shop is already in place and they want to purchase their normal stock, that is not to be financed under a JME. But if a customer, whether a self-employed or a company, has already a business but is going to feature a new business line, they're going to import new products or they're going to expand. So the initial stock, yes, is covered under the JME, because we understand that there are hefty costs when it is a new business. The interest rate, which previously was 3.5, has been further reduced to 3%. And when one compares this to the normal standard business loan, which usually carries an interest rate of 5.5%, one can see how much savings can be done. Later on, we'll show you a slide to also show the actual savings in euros, which are very considerate. The term, previously it was 10 years, has been extended to 12 years. So the term of this loan is between 2 to 12 years. Having said that, if the purchase of the product, for example, is a second-hand product, which has a life expectancy of, say, 8 years, one has to keep in mind that the term of the loan is to be in line with the life expectancy of the product being purchased. When it comes to stock, which we mentioned earlier, usually the term will not be more than 4 years. Let's say you're going to purchase edible stock, which is usually consumed before 2 years, still the minimum term is 2 years. The contribution that the customer is expected to fork out is 20%. So let's say you're having a project which costs 100,000. The first 20,000 are expected to be forked out by the customer. Here it is important to note that no deposits are to be made before the JME agreement is signed with the bank. Because if the product is paid a deposit by the investor before the JME contract is signed, then that product will not be eligible for the JME any longer, since this particular product is not for refinancing. So once you get quotations and you think that you're going to go for that project investment, please approach the bank before making any deposits. Reduced collateral obligations means that whereas usually banks seek for full security when they are giving normal business loans, when we come to a JME loan, only 25% of the loan is expected as collateral. Collateral can be given in various shapes. It can be through hypothecated property, it could be through cash. By cash, we do not mean notes, of course, we mean bank accounts or quasi-cash like investments. They can be in the principal debtor's name, they can be in the name of third parties, so we are quite flexible. We will ask for a life policy on the principal debtor if it's a company on the key person, and for the product being purchased to be insured. After all, these are I think what you should do even if you are not taking a loan for your own interest. Charges are also being reduced, since we usually ask for a 0.3% charge as processing fee, which is totally being waived off. What we ask is that the only charge that there is a 0.1% renewal fee on the outstanding balance of the loan. Every year, the bank asks for the latest financials to check that the business is doing good and the loan is being paid according to schedule. We make this review, and at that point, we charge the 0.1%. Since the loan is reduced because it is being paid, then the charge will also reduce because the outstanding balance is less. There is a minimum charge, however, the charge is expected to decrease year on year. The state aid, as it was mentioned before, is your right to know how much grant equivalent you're taking from this JME loan. Because as was mentioned before, every company or every self-employed has a de minimis capping of how much grants they can get. And therefore, by knowing how much grant you'll be taking from the JME loan, you'd know how much more you are eligible for different grants. The amount has also been increased to 500,000, therefore reaching out to more projects and to more customers. It is important to note here that if a self-employed has already applied for a JME loan, whether this has been totally paid up or is still being paid, let's say they have already applied for 200,000. So now they can only apply up to 300,000. In total, no more than 500,000 in Genovese per applicant. Same goes for companies who form part of a group of companies. So let's say a sister company has already applied for 300,000 in loan, the other sister company can apply up to 200,000 because the group of companies are eligible up to 500,000 in JME loans. Like that, we can reach as many different SMEs as possible. Eligible sectors are practically all SMEs established and operating in Malta and Gozo, excluding agricultural, fisheries, gaming, and pure real estate development sectors. This is the work out example that we were speaking of before. Let's say 100,000 loan is given through a JME with the interest rate of 3%. That would constitute a monthly repayment of 829.74. If the same loan, the same amount of 100,000 is given under a normal business loan of 5.5%, that would constitute a monthly repayment of 954.07. If you take the difference and multiply it over 12 years, the savings on interest rate would be 17,903, which I think is a very considerate amount which can be invested elsewhere. The eligibility checklist is that the project is new and not refinanced. Whether it has been partly financed or fully financed, that product would not be able to be financed under the JME. For clarification purposes, let's say a project is, let's take an example. A restaurant is being refurbished and new equipment needs to be bought. If the refurbishing itself has already been financed, but the equipment has not yet been bought and no deposits on the equipment have been made, then the equipment, yes, can be financed under a JME. The facility is towards the capital investment or the working capital, as we explained before, and the project is undertaken in Malta or in Gozo. All or part of the loan is not being used to finance a grant. Again, let's take the example of the restaurant. If a grant, certain grants have been taken on different project items, as long as the item which is being financed under the JME has not received any kind of grant, then most probably that is an item which can be financed under the JME. But do check with us and with Malta Enterprise at the same time to make sure that you are not applying for two grants on the same product. And the transactions are not relating to the excluded sector that we mentioned earlier. This slide, I will not really waste much time on it because in Malta and especially in Gozo, most of the businesses do fall under the SME criteria. Before I conclude, I would like to also point out that even if the supplier is going to be paid out in a different currency, the denomination of the JME facility is always in euro. Also, the disbursements and withdrawals are to be made within 1 year of the JME being sanctioned. And if the customer thinks that it's better not to repay the loan immediately after the drawdown, but let's say they want a breather space, we do give moratoriums of up to 6 months. So then the loan can be paid over a period of 11.5 years instead of 12, because we would have given on a moratorium on repayments for the first 6 months. Should you wish to come prepared already for the meeting, these are the documents that we usually ask for, which for companies we ask for the 3 years audited accounts, and for a self-employed, the income tax return together with the profit and loss for the last 3 years, the latest managed accounts, the business plan, including the cash flow forecast, and the 1-year statement of other banks if the customer hold accounts not with Bank of Valletta but with other banks, together with that other bank's position sheet. We do require the original VAT certificate together with the second page to understand in which industry the customer is operating, and the tax compliance certificate or declaration from the accountant to understand if there are any taxes due. However, these are just for you to know. You do not need to bring any of this documentation with you for our first meeting. During the first meeting, you can discuss, and also we get thinking of what you require, of what you would need and what the bank usually asks. Once the requirements are presented to the bank, the application process is started, and after the sanctioning, the agreement is signed between the bank and the customer, then the customer can go ahead and give the deposit to the supplier. Meanwhile, we will also get in place the security required, and the JME loan can be withdrawn. It is an easier process than what maybe we have explained. It's a norm. Even if you would have applied for a home loan, this documentation would be required. So truly, JME is a product which can really help you develop further your business. Should you have any inquiries that you wish to ask now, or also email us for privacy issues, or contact us directly, these are our contact details. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ruth, for that insight presentation about the JME loan. Now the presentations, we are done with the presentations, so we can move forward to the questions from the attendees. May I remind you that you can also post any questions that you might have also on our social media. In the meantime, we're going to have a look at the questions which are being sent via the Zoom link. I know that I've seen that, in fact, Anthony David Gatt has already replied to some of the questions. So just now, a question by Sharon Zamit this one is for Ruth. Is JME applicable to purchase of property to build a new office?
Nahel mute, please, Ruth. Thank you.
Yes, real estate is excluded if it's just to purchase property to resell. But yes, if property is to be used as an office or to conduct business from that office, yes, it falls under the eligibility criteria. I saw also another, if I may, Elaine, I saw another question which was about the contribution. Mm-hmm. Yes, contribution is expected to be paid in the initial stage. After the JME agreement is signed, then yes, the first chunk of the project, the 20% of the project should be paid out upfront contribution by the customer.
Okay, thank you very much, Ruth. Okay, this has been answered as well. So there is another question for Anthony. I'm not sure if he has replied already. Basically, it's about
But basically, the de minimis question is something that does pop up from time to time, and I believe that all of us struggle with the situation and with giving an answer which respects the views of the companies that would want to receive more support, but without sounding evasive, this is a European law, European regulation that does affect the volume of aid that can be made available under particular circumstances. This is not to say that we or others haven't in the past pushed for such capping to change or to be developed or to take into consideration particular realities, including that of peripheral regions like that of Gozo. However, I would not be correct in saying that there is any hope that this will change anytime soon when it comes to the de minimis regulation. So unfortunately, I cannot say much more than that.
Okay, thank you very much, Anthony, for your input. There's another question for Ruth. Whether the JME is applicable for the construction of a new office, what are the main conditions involved for applicability?
Practically, yes. Any premises from which the customer will be operating, whether if it's manufacturing, if it's office, yes, anything is okay as long as the real estate is not being purchased for resale. What we would require is the same, exactly as we mentioned before. Then, of course, we will see maybe the customer is in need of a certain licenses or some other requirements that it might seem fit to ask. However, the bases are the same.
Okay, and another question with respect to Jamie, whether it's applicable for the construction of new tourist accommodation, such as boutique hotel or guest house.
Yes, it is also.
Very well, thank you. Not sure if there doesn't seem to be any further questions. We'll wait for a couple of minutes more, just in case someone else has any other questions. As I said, you can post also any questions you might have on our social media. Our speakers have generously also provided their contact details in case you would like to contact them in due course. And I thank them for that as well. Okay, so there doesn't seem to be any further questions from our attendees. For this reason, I would like to conclude we are just in time. So we managed to keep our time. I would like to thank once again our speakers, Anthony, David, Gatt, Ronald, Sultana, and also Genovese for their input this morning. I would also like to thank Richard Grech, our technical coordinator, during this webinar. I hope that I'm sure that this webinar was very fruitful for our business, Gozitan businesses, which unfortunately some face added handicaps related to our double insularity, but we've seen that there are incentives out there which can help mitigate these disadvantages faced by the Gozitan Business Based Enterprises. I would like you to continue following us also on our webpage and Facebook page in order to keep up to date with any updates and any future seminars that we might hold, which might be of interest. I thank you once again for participating and also for attending, and I wish you all a fruitful day and also a nice weekend ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Grazie lil kulħadd.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good day.